Preston has asked me, more than once, what I'm truly worth. He's wanted to know before we take the next steps in our relationship. But the truth is, Walter, my husband, left the vast majority of his estate, nearly 85% of everything he owned, to charitable organizations here in Arizona. I only inherited our family home, which I still live in, and a modest monthly income from a trust that allows me to live comfortably. Preston, where are you going?
She stood in front of 200 guests, holding a microphone, about to declare her financial worth to the man she loved on his birthday. She thought it would be the moment he finally proposed. Instead, when the numbers left her mouth, his face went pale, his jaw locked, and within 30 minutes, he was gone. Gone from the party, gone from her life. Gone the moment he realized the fortune he'd been chasing for 18 months never belonged to her at all. Stay with me, because what happened next will make you rethink everything you believe about love, money, and the people who claim to want you for you. Welcome back to the channel, where we bring you real, raw stories about love, betrayal, and the lessons life teaches us when we least expect them. If you're new here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, because every single week we bring you stories just like this one. Stories that remind us why it's so important to protect our hearts, our peace, and our worth. Today's story is called, She Declared Her Worth, and He Walked Away. And I promise you, by the end of this video, you're going to have a lot to say in the comments. So grab a cup of coffee, get comfortable, and let's dive into the story of a young widow named Vanessa Hale, a man named Preston Cole, and a birthday party that changed everything. Vanessa Hale never imagined she'd be a widow at 34 years old. She met her husband, Walter Hale, back when she was 26, working as a receptionist at a real estate office in Scottsdale, Arizona. Walter was 15 years older than her, already a successful developer with properties scattered across Phoenix, Tucson, and even a few commercial buildings in Denver. He wasn't flashy. He drove a modest truck, wore the same 3 pairs of boots for years, and never talked about money unless it was to quietly write a check for someone in need. Vanessa fell in love with him not because of what he had, but because of who he was. He listened when she spoke. He remembered small details about her day. He never once made her feel like she was less than him, even though on paper he had built an empire and she was just starting out in life. They married 2 years later, in a small ceremony in Sedona, surrounded by red rock cliffs and about 40 of their closest friends and family. For 6 years, their marriage was steady, warm, and full of quiet joy. They didn't have children, something that weighed on Vanessa privately, but Walter never made her feel incomplete because of it. He used to tell her, "You are enough, Vanessa. You have always been enough." Then, on a Tuesday morning in early spring, Walter collapsed in his home office. A massive heart attack, the doctors said. By the time the paramedics arrived, he was already gone. He was 49 years old. Vanessa's world shattered that day. She went from being a wife who woke up next to her best friend every morning, to a widow who had to plan a funeral, notify family members, and somehow keep breathing through a grief so heavy it felt physical. The funeral was massive. Walter had touched so many lives in Scottsdale and the surrounding areas that the church could barely hold everyone who came to pay their respects. Business partners, employees, neighbors, even people Walter had quietly helped over the years, without Vanessa ever knowing, they all showed up to say goodbye to a man who had built his life on quiet generosity. After the funeral, there was of course the matter of the will. Vanessa assumed, like most people would, that as Walter's wife, she would inherit everything: the house, the properties, the investments. She wasn't thinking about money in those early weeks. She was thinking about how to survive a life without him. But when the family lawyer, a soft-spoken man named Arthur Donovan, sat her down 3 weeks after the funeral, what she learned changed the trajectory of her life in ways she never expected. Walter, it turned out, had rewritten his will nearly 2 years before his death. Vanessa would keep the family home in Scottsdale, a modest but comfortable 4-bedroom house they had shared together. She would also receive a monthly stipend from a trust, enough to live comfortably, but nowhere near the scale of wealth that outsiders assumed Walter possessed. The rest, Nearly 85% of his total estate, including the majority of his real estate holdings, his investment portfolio, and a significant cash reserve, was left to a charitable foundation Walter had quietly established years earlier. The foundation supported underprivileged children in Arizona, funded scholarships for first-generation college students, and built transitional housing for families coming out of homelessness. Vanessa wasn't angry. If anything, she felt a strange, aching pride. This was exactly who Walter was. He had spent his whole life giving quietly, and even in death he continued that legacy. He had provided for her, but he had also made sure his fortune would go towards something bigger than either of them. What Vanessa didn't realize, however, was that almost nobody outside of her immediate family and Walter's inner circle knew the details of that will. To the outside world, to old business associates, to acquaintances, to strangers who read about Walter Hale's death in the local paper, Vanessa Hale was simply the young widow of a wealthy Scottsdale developer. The assumption of wealth followed her like a shadow, one she never bothered to correct, because frankly, it wasn't anyone's business. That assumption is exactly what brought Preston Cole into her life. Vanessa met Preston about 14 months after Walter's passing. She had finally started to feel like herself again, slowly stepping back into the world, attending a friend's dinner party in Phoenix, where Preston happened to be a guest. He was 36, tall, well-built, with an easy charm that made people gravitate toward him. He worked as a personal trainer and was, according to him, in the process of launching his own fitness and wellness brand. He approached Vanessa that night with a warmth that felt different from the awkward, pitying sympathy she'd grown used to receiving from people who knew about Walter. Preston didn't tiptoe around her grief. He asked about her, genuinely, or at least it seemed that way. He made her laugh for the first time in over a year. They exchanged numbers that night, and within a few weeks, they were seeing each other regularly. Vanessa was cautious at first. Grief has a way of making you question your own judgment, your own readiness. But Preston was patient. He never pushed. He showed up with small, thoughtful gestures. Her favorite coffee order remembered, after just one mention. A playlist of songs, he said, reminded him of their conversations. Check-in texts, just to see how her day was going. Slowly, Vanessa let her guard down. By the 6-month mark, they were practically inseparable. Preston had a way of making Vanessa feel like she was the center of his universe. He talked about their future in vague but hopeful terms, trips they'd take together, a life they'd build. Vanessa, still healing but hopeful again for the first time since Walter's death, allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she had found love again. But there were things about Preston that, looking back, Vanessa should have paid closer attention to. He asked a lot of questions about Walter's business. At first, it seemed like normal curiosity, the kind of thing anyone might ask about a partner's late spouse. But over time, the questions became more specific. What properties did Walter own? Was the business still running? Did Vanessa still receive income from it? He'd frame these questions casually, tucked into conversations about their day, but Vanessa's close friend, a woman named Monica Ruiz who had known Vanessa since college, began to notice a pattern. "He asks about money a lot, Vanessa," Monica told her one afternoon over lunch in downtown Phoenix. "Have you noticed that?" Vanessa brushed it off. "He's just curious. It's not a big deal, Monica. He's not like that." But Monica wasn't convinced. She had met Preston a handful of times, and something about the way he carried himself, confident to the point of entitlement, charming in a way that felt rehearsed, didn't sit right with her. She kept her concerns to herself for a while, not wanting to interfere in her friend's happiness, especially after everything Vanessa had been through. Meanwhile, Preston's business, the fitness brand he talked about so often, never seemed to actually launch. There were always reasons. He was waiting on investors. He was finalizing a location. He needed better equipment before he could start marketing. Vanessa, wanting to be supportive, occasionally helped him out financially, covering a few bills here and there, paying for a business dinner with a potential investor, contributing toward a car repair so he could keep meeting clients. None of these amounts were massive on their own. A few $100s here, 1,000 there, but they added up. And more importantly, they established a pattern, a dynamic, where Preston positioned himself as someone building towards something, and Vanessa as someone in a position to help him get there. Around the 10-month mark of their relationship, Preston began dropping hints about marriage. He talked about how he could see Vanessa as his wife, how he wanted to build a life together, a real life, with property, with security, with a legacy they could pass down. Vanessa, still somewhat naive about his intentions, found herself moved by these conversations. After losing Walter, the idea of building a future with someone again felt like healing. But then Preston started asking a different kind of question, one that Vanessa would later look back on as the first real red flag she chose to ignore. "Vanessa," he said one evening as they sat on her back patio, the Arizona sunset painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "I need to know something. If we're going to build a life together, I need to know what I'm actually building toward. What are you worth? Financially, I mean. I'm not trying to be crude, but I need to know what I'm walking into here." Vanessa remembered feeling a small jolt of discomfort at the question, but Preston quickly softened it, framing it as practical, as something any serious partner would want to know before committing to marriage. He talked about wanting to plan properly, about wanting to make sure they were building something solid, about not wanting any surprises down the road. Vanessa, still under the spell of what she believed was genuine love, gave him a vague answer at the time, something about being comfortable, about not needing to worry financially. She didn't tell him specifics, partly because Walter had always taught her to keep financial matters private, and partly because some small, quiet part of her wasn't ready to fully answer that question herself. But Preston didn't let it go. Over the following weeks, he brought it up again and again, each time slightly more insistent than the last. He framed it as vulnerability, telling Vanessa that he had opened himself up to her completely, and he needed her to do the same. He talked about trust, about partnership, about how real love meant full transparency, including financial transparency. Monica, watching all of this unfold from the sidelines, grew increasingly worried. "He's building up to something, Vanessa," she warned during one of their coffee catch-ups in Old Town Scottsdale. "Men like that, the way he keeps circling back to your money, it's not about trust. It's about making sure the investment is worth it before he commits." Vanessa wanted to believe her friend was wrong. She wanted to believe that the man who made her laugh again, who held her when she cried about Walter, who talked about their future with such warmth, genuinely loved her for who she was. Preston's birthday was approaching, his 37th, and he had been talking about it for weeks, dropping hints about wanting something special, something memorable. He suggested, somewhat pointedly, that it might be the perfect occasion for Vanessa to finally be open with him, to show him where they truly stood, to declare, as he put it, what we're really building toward. Vanessa decided, in a moment of emotional vulnerability and hope, that she would use his birthday celebration as an opportunity to be fully transparent. She would tell him everything, her actual financial situation, the truth about Walter's will, the modest but comfortable life she actually lived. She told herself it was the right thing to do, that real love should be able to withstand honesty, that if Preston truly loved her, the truth about her finances wouldn't change anything between them. What Vanessa didn't fully register, not consciously anyway, was that she was about to test exactly that. She planned the party carefully, a rented venue just outside of Scottsdale, string lights strung across a courtyard, a live jazz trio, around 200 guests made up of Preston's friends, a few of his extended family members who had flown in from out of state, and her own close circle, including Monica. She wanted the night to be beautiful. She wanted it to be a celebration not just of Preston's birthday, but of the honesty she was about to offer him. The night of the party arrived, warm and clear, the kind of Arizona evening where the sky stretches out in soft purples and golds, before darkening into a blanket of stars. Preston arrived looking every bit the golden man he always presented himself as. Tailored navy suit, confident smile, working the room with practiced charisma. He thanked guests for coming, laughed loudly at jokes, soaked in the attention of turning 37, surrounded by people who adored him. Around 9 in the evening, after dinner had been served and the cake had been cut, Vanessa made her way to the small stage set up near the string lights. She had arranged with the event coordinator to have a microphone ready. Her heart was pounding, but she told herself this was the right moment, the right way to finally be fully open with the man she had built her second chance at love around. She tapped the microphone gently, and the chatter in the courtyard slowly quieted as guests turned their attention to her. "Good evening, everyone," Vanessa began, her voice steady despite the nerves twisting in her stomach. "Thank you all so much for being here tonight to celebrate Preston. He means so much to me, and I wanted to take a moment, in front of everyone who loves him, to be completely honest with him about something he's asked me many times over the past few months." Preston stood near the front of the small crowd, his expression curious, a slow smile spreading across his face. He clearly assumed, based on everything he'd been pushing toward for weeks, that this was the moment. The moment Vanessa would finally reveal the extent of her wealth, perhaps even the moment leading into a proposal of some kind, a public declaration that would cement their future together in front of everyone he knew. Vanessa continued, "Preston has asked me, more than once, what I'm truly worth. He's wanted to know, before we take the next steps in our relationship, exactly what he'd be building his future around. So tonight, in front of everyone here, I want to answer that honestly." The courtyard grew quieter still. Even the jazz trio had paused their playing, sensing the shift in the room. "My late husband Walter was a good man," Vanessa said, her voice softening as she spoke his name, a small tremor of emotion breaking through. "When he passed, many people assumed I inherited everything he built over his lifetime. But the truth is, Walter left the vast majority of his estate, nearly 85% of everything he owned, to charitable organizations here in Arizona. Foundations that support underprivileged children, scholarships for first-generation college students, housing programs for families rebuilding their lives. He believed his wealth could do more good in the world than it could sitting in a bank account." A murmur rippled through the crowd, some guests nodding with quiet admiration, clearly moved by the story of a man who had chosen generosity over legacy in the traditional sense. "What I actually inherited," Vanessa continued, "is our family home, which I still live in, and a modest monthly income from a trust that allows me to live comfortably, but by no means extravagantly. I am not, and have never been, sitting on some hidden fortune. I am a woman who lost her husband, who has been rebuilding her life one day at a time, and who has never once needed anyone to see me as a bank account." The room had gone almost completely silent now. Vanessa's eyes found Preston's face, and what she saw there confirmed everything Monica had tried to warn her about for months. The easy charm was gone. His smile had frozen, then slowly collapsed into something colder, something she had never seen on his face before. His jaw tightened. His eyes, once so warm when they looked at her, now flickered with something that looked disturbingly close to disgust. "That," Vanessa said, her voice steadying with a strange sense of clarity, "is my worth, Preston. Not in dollars, in character, in resilience, in the love I have left to give, even after everything I've lost. I wanted you to know that tonight, in front of the people who care about you, because I think you deserve honesty, even if it's not the answer you were hoping for." For a long, suspended moment, nobody in the courtyard moved. Preston stood frozen, his face cycling through disbelief, anger, and something that looked almost like humiliation, as though the mask he had worn for over a year had suddenly been ripped away in front of everyone who knew him. Then, without saying a word, he turned and walked away from the small stage, weaving through the stunned crowd toward the exit of the venue. Vanessa watched him go, her heart pounding, part of her hoping he would turn back, would say something, anything that might prove Monica wrong, that might prove this wasn't about the money at all. He didn't turn back. Within 30 minutes, Preston had left the party entirely, offering only a curt excuse to a few close friends about not feeling well. He didn't say goodbye to Vanessa. He didn't thank her for the party she had spent weeks planning. He simply left, the way a man leaves a business deal that no longer serves his interests. Monica found Vanessa standing near the edge of the courtyard a short while later, staring out at the string lights swaying gently in the warm evening breeze. "Are you okay?" Monica asked softly, wrapping an arm around her friend's shoulders. Vanessa nodded slowly, though tears had begun to gather in her eyes. "I think," she said quietly, "I finally got the answer I needed. I just didn't expect it to hurt this much, even though some part of me already knew." In the days that followed, Preston never reached out. No phone call, no message, no explanation. It was as though the 18 months they had spent together simply evaporated the moment the truth about her finances came to light. Vanessa later learned, through mutual acquaintances, that Preston had been telling people around town that he was dating Walter Hale's widow, dropping the implication of wealth into conversations, using her late husband's name and reputation to build his own social standing. It became painfully clear, in hindsight, that Preston had never loved Vanessa for who she was. He had loved the idea of what he assumed she represented, a wealthy widow, a shortcut to the kind of financial security and status he had spent years chasing without ever building it himself. Vanessa grieved the relationship, but not in the way she had grieved Walter. This grief was different, tangled with anger, humiliation, and a hard, clarifying kind of relief. She had spent 18 months slowly opening her heart again, only to discover that the man she had let in was never truly there for her at all. Monica, ever the steady presence, sat with her through the difficult weeks that followed. "You did the right thing," she told Vanessa one evening, as they sat together on the same patio where Preston had first asked about her worth. "You gave him the truth, and the truth showed you exactly who he really was." Imagine if you had married him first, Vanessa. Imagine finding this out after the wedding, after he had access to everything. Vanessa knew Monica was right. As painful as the birthday party had been, it had also protected her from a far greater heartbreak down the road. Preston's departure that night, as humiliating and public as it was, had been a gift disguised as devastation. It confirmed, in the clearest way possible, that his love had always come with a price tag attached, one Vanessa had simply refused to pay. In the months that followed, Vanessa threw herself into honoring Walter's legacy more fully. She began volunteering with the very charitable foundation he had established, spending her weekends helping coordinate scholarship programs for first-generation college students across Arizona. She found a sense of purpose in that work that had nothing to do with romantic relationships or financial declarations, a purpose rooted entirely in the values Walter had lived by. She also began speaking, quietly at first, and then more openly, about her experience with Preston, not out of bitterness, but as a way of helping other women recognize similar patterns in their own relationships. She joined a small support group for widows in the Scottsdale area, women who understood, in ways few others could, the particular vulnerability that comes with rebuilding a life after profound loss, and the way that vulnerability can sometimes attract people with less than honorable intentions. A year later, Vanessa met someone new, a quiet, steady man named Wesley Turner, a high school history teacher who had never once asked her about money, who seemed entirely uninterested in anything related to Walter's estate, and who fell in love with her slowly, patiently, in a way that felt nothing like the whirlwind intensity of her relationship with Preston. When Vanessa eventually told Wesley the same story she had told 200 guests at that fateful birthday party, about Walter's will, about the charitable foundation, about the modest life she actually lived, Wesley simply nodded and said, "That sounds like it was a beautiful thing your husband did. I'm glad you're proud of him. It doesn't change anything about how I feel about you." It was, Vanessa realized, the response she had always deserved, and the response Preston had never been capable of giving. Now, before we wrap up today's story, I want to take a moment to talk directly to you, because I know so many of you watching this have either experienced something similar or know someone who has. If you are someone who has recently lost a spouse, or if you are entering a new relationship after significant loss, please pay close attention to how quickly someone pushes for financial transparency, especially before real emotional trust has had time to develop. There is a difference between healthy communication about finances within a committed, established relationship and someone repeatedly circling back to questions about your net worth, your inheritance, or your financial security early on. That pattern is rarely about building a future together. More often, it's about assessing whether you're worth the investment of their time. Pay attention to how someone treats you when they believe money isn't part of the equation. Notice how they respond to your grief, your vulnerability, your bad days, not just the polished, easy version of you they meet at dinner parties. Real love doesn't evaporate the moment financial expectations aren't met. Real love stays, curious and steady, even when the numbers turn out smaller than expected. And if you are currently in a relationship where you feel pressured to prove your worth through money, through gifts, through what you can provide, please hear this clearly. Your worth was never meant to be measured in dollars. Vanessa's story reminds us that the people who truly love us stay for our character, our resilience, and our hearts, not for what they believe they can gain from us. Trust your intuition. If something feels off, if a pattern keeps repeating itself despite your discomfort, don't ignore it the way Vanessa initially did. Lean on trusted friends, like Monica, who can offer an outside perspective when you're too emotionally invested to see clearly. And above all, protect your peace. You have already survived enough. You deserve a love that adds to your life, not one that quietly calculates what it can take from it. If this story moved you, touched something in your own life, or reminded you of someone you know, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below telling us what part of Vanessa's journey resonated with you the most. Your comments genuinely help this channel grow, and they help us understand what stories you want to hear more of. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss one of our stories. And make sure to share this video with anyone in your life who might need to hear this message today. We upload new stories every single week. Stories about love, loss, betrayal, and the strength it takes to rebuild your life on your own terms. Thank you so much for watching until the very end. Take care of yourselves, protect your worth, and we'll see you in the next story.
Please subscribe to my YouTube channel and support me. Thank you so much. I love you all. Bye!